welcome to the Blitz match between Karpov and Sejravan. We've got a deadlocked match, but 10 Blitz games today, where 10 points are going to be on offer, and we are going to see a winner of this match. First game, what do we have in the opening? We've got another Slav, right? This is what Yasser Sejravan has played every game of the match so far.
Right, and after e3 on move 4, other games we saw Sejravan playing bishop g4. He played a6, so he's playing a6 Slav against e3. After knight bd2, Yasser actually had quite a think for a 5-minute game, and eventually played g6, playing the same pawn structure he played in the earlier games. Bishop d3, bishop g7, very normal, and then queen c2, and then both sides have castled. So we're seeing more of the same solid chess, but while the players start in time trouble, so I think the position is going to open up pretty quickly. And now Yasser's played knight b to d7. We'll remind our listeners it's 5 minutes with a 2-second increment, so it's going to be fast and furious from now on. They traded on d5.
Yasser was pointing out how fast the 5-second increment went by yesterday. The 2-second increment going to go by even faster. And we're probably going to be switching to our webcam shot quite a lot in this game as the players are moving so quickly.
Yep, and after b3 we see b6. Bishop went to a3, where it's obviously more powerful in the diagonal than going simply to b2. What's that?
Invite me.
Oh, and then after bishop a3, bishop b7. Rook a c1, rook c8 attacking the queen. The queen went to b1.
And they're going to switch colors every blitz game.
Rook e8, Karpov played h3, and the very solid move e6 instead of e5.
And who's ahead on the clock? We're going to get some clock times up here quickly because that's going to be of crucial importance. We've got actually the nice little chrono shot here. It looks like they're actually pretty close. Yasser Sejravan has had the advantage on the clock in most games, and actually that was crucial in the one game that it seemed like Karpov was close to winning. He managed to get a draw, Yasser did, by virtue of his better clock position.
Very positional.
And we looked
so
like we're
far.
trading things off on it.
Yeah, and there's going to be a lot of trades now.
Something's gotten traded on f8, so you might want to just copy the position and get us caught up.
No, after bishop d6, bishop f8 was played, and then lots of trades. Yep.
Yeah, we've gotten lots of moves in the position. We're just going to try to keep up with them and get to the closest position that we can. As, of course, they're moving so quickly. Being up a minute in the clock in blitz is probably equal to being up a pawn, even with the 2-second increment.
Right, bishop takes f8, rook takes f8, rook takes c8, queen takes c8. And now Karpov's played queen b2. Yasser's played queen b8, and they're probably going to trade rooks pretty soon on the c file, and that's exactly what happened. Rook c1 was played, rook c8. And Karpov has the smallest of advantages. It's sort of the reverse of one of the games Yasser had white, with the white squared bishop on d3 obviously being slightly better than his counterpart on b7. Still, you got to think black has just about equalized here.
Fewer than 3 minutes for Karpov, actually. He's ticking down, as we see on our webcam shot here. Under 2.5 minutes. So earlier I said that being up a minute in this blitz game is probably about equal to being up a pawn, and Yasser's got there. But one thing you notice in blitz is often when one side gets a time advantage, it ends up equalizing pretty quickly because it almost gives permission for the other player then to take their time. Have you noticed that a lot, Ben?
Yeah, exactly. It seems like when you have more time, they're playing slower, and then the time equalizes eventually.
And we do have a trade.
Rooks on c8.
Rook takes c8. Now, is this game headed for another draw?
Yeah.
Despite the fact that we thought we'd see blood in blitz, but I mean, with so many trades, you got to wonder. So rook c8, queen c8, knight to e5.
Yeah, and I'm sure Yasser's pretty happy about the opening choice and the way he's played the opening because
queen c7 and now f4.
Yeah, virtually equalized the position. And Karpov's going for an advantage instead of trading on d7, f4, keeping control of the e5 square.
He's got the better bishop, and he's got a really strong knight there on e5. So he's going to be going for it in this game, despite the fact that so many pieces are traded off. The only thing that Yasser has going for him is the open c file, but there's no entry points on that right now. Still, I think that in order for Karpov to get a big advantage here, he's going to have to get his queen into the game somehow.
Yeah, and Yasser played knight e8. He wants the knight to go to d6, and that way he can kick the knight on e5 out with the later f6. And Karpov immediately decided to trade queens. Queen c2, queen takes c2,
No, queen
bishop
piece.
takes c2. And yeah, I have the feeling this is going to be a draw. Though probably going to play it out for a while because both sides are in time trouble.
Yeah, but Yasser with a huge edge in the clock in this game.
Knight
Almost
b8
twice
by
as much
Yasser,
time.
g4, and then f6, kicking out the unwanted visitor on e5. Luckily, he's only a visitor, and Karpov has retreated to f3.
Amazing the defensive skills in this match. I mean, even in this game, you see these great backward maneuvers in order to try to occupy key squares. But I think the great defensive skills in this match is why we haven't seen too much blood spill yet. King f8 played.
Yep. And Karpov trying to get a space advantage with h4.
Yeah, we've seen that kind of thing in many of his games. The game that he got a dominant initiative against Yasser, we also saw him play g4 and h4. Only to accept a draw because he had so little time to try to convert it.
Right.
Now, do you think that White's advantage is serious here if it was a real game? A5 played by Yasser.
Well, I think White has a nice position, but still within the realm of equality.
A5 and bishop a6 solving, trying.
Bishop d3, right.
Attempting to solve the problem of that terrible bishop on b7, which we've seen in so many games, not only in this match, but also the U.S. Championship.
Karpov catching up a little bit on the clock, but not having a think. Doesn't want to trade those bishops, but Black's bishop is actually quite nice on a6 then.
Well, this is definitely going to be a crazy blitz match, but let's just say the first game doesn't look too crazy.
No, a very solid
Massive
play
trades.
that reminds me of the other games. Very solid play by both players. And Yasser playing a slightly different variation this time, a6 on move 4. And it looks like he equalized pretty easily.
That's right. I think Karpov's going to have to switch to e4 at some point. Sejravan himself said that he gets shivers sometimes when his opponents play e4, that he really prefers when they play d4, c4.
This really isn't a good position for Karpov to think for 30 seconds. And he traded on a6, knight takes a6.
And he has less than 1 minute left.
Right, and then played g5.
Yeah, a lot of the same themes we've been seeing throughout this match.
Knight
the bad
b4.
bishop trying to get traded. Knight b4.
a4 was played.
a4, and he knocks over Yasser's piece, but Yasser having more than 2 minutes. Obviously, these are two gentlemen. We're not going to see too much dirty play in this blitz match, although sometimes it's hard to avoid.
Maybe the last game or two.
Dexterity is so important in blitz.
So Yasser with almost a 1 minute time advantage. King f7. King f2.
No, this type of position is a little bit easier than normal to play in a blitz game.
4.
I'm just trying to keep up here with them. We've got the webcam shot, and we've got the DGT board still working and relaying these moves, which is again a testament to their dexterity here.
King e2 is played. Knight f5. Knight f1, and we have a very equal endgame here.
But blunders are always possible in blitz. That's the thing, right? Now, what if?
Yep.
And yeah, it looks like we do have Black playing h5. And the knight coming back to
Yasser's
c6.
very happy with this position. His knights are better than Karpov's, and more importantly, he has a big time advantage. Only the 2-second increment can save Karpov here. I think if there was no increment, he would probably just lose on time in 20 or 30 moves. But with the increment, he can play quite a long time.
And we've got a Yasser maneuvering to play knight c6 and e5.
Right. King d2, knight c6. Karpov just moving back and forth, king e2, and Yasser blowing it up with e5 now, making it complicated in the time trouble.
All right, so what happens?
G takes f6 was played.
G takes f6, and now...
Yasser's going to take either on d4, f4 now.
Or he could play e4.
He could, but I think he wants to weaken Karpov's pawns on the...
Oh, e4 also allows knight to e5 check, which would be a very strong response.
Right.
Keeping that pawn on f6 because Black would be forced to recapture. So instead, we'll see something taken on f4.
Right, it's really blowing up now. E takes f4 was played.
E takes f4 instantly.
Knight
Knight
e5
e5 check
instantly.
by Karpov.
Yasser has to capture. His knight's hanging. D takes e5, obviously.
And that's why this game, would be a dead draw in a classical game, but in blitz, things are flying. Nobody can come up with the most accurate moves. They're just going to go by instinct.
Lots of pawns hanging and passed pawns in this game.
And take on e3, take on e3. Now, do you think Karpov's analyzed this pawn endgame perfectly?
No. No, but Yasser's looking at it now, taking the knight and playing g5 and having these two outside pass pawns. Although white can then try to checkmate black by playing king f4, king f5, and those three connected pass pawns.
And we've got 36 seconds for Yasser, and thank goodness for him that he's got a time edge because this is a crucial moment. Is he going to take on e3 and go for the pawn endgame? Knight takes e3, king takes e3, and as Ben Feingold mentioned,
He did play that, and he played g5.
and he
played
played
the line.
g5.
So either black's going to get, this game is not going to be a draw. Either black's going to get a queen or white's going to checkmate black.
And take on g5, h3, king f5. What's going on?
Yep, I don't know. Either white's going to checkmate black or black's going to get a queen.
We can see it right here in
H2
the
was
webcam.
played.
H2, now Karpov has to decide which pawn to move forward, e6 or g6. He plays g6 check, king f8 or e8. Yasser isn't sure. He plays it to f8. And now king
And he
g6,
got checkmated.
and he's
And
going to get
Yasser's
mated.
Yeah.
And we see the expression on Yasser-Sejravan's face.
But even here he's already losing. If king f7, then e6. Yeah, I knew it was going to be either a checkmate or a pawn promotion, and actually.
Anatoly
yeah, one
Karpov draws the first blood of this match, winning with white from an equal position when Yasser went into a flawed pawn endgame.
Jen, let's have a listen in from players upstairs if we can.
Yeah, we're going to try to listen into the commentary here.
And first,
But of course, I could not control g5 and d4. I take and d5. h3, e6 check. I was making draw. Yes. After g5, king d4. You take king d5. h3, e6 check. Knight king d6, h2, e7, h1, e8.
Wow. E5?
Huh?
E5, I thought something was good.
I think white's just winning in this position. There's just too many mating threats, and the pawns are going to queen. So I think this idea is just losing.
So the idea of
Right. I mean, it was my idea also, but I was afraid I'd get checkmated.
Of taking on e3.
Luckily, I was sitting here, so I didn't get checkmated.
well, after knight takes e3, then instead of knight takes e3, maybe he has to do something else here.
Yeah, he could play king e6 or knight takes h4.
Knight takes h4. Maybe he could play knight. He could also consider playing for a different pawn game after d4. Although that also
well, after d4 you take and play king d3, and the d pawn is going to fall.
Yeah, that looks terrible.
Yeah. Problem with king e6 during the game, I was looking at this move. White could play knight takes d5, and I wasn't sure what black would do in this position. Pawn on b6 is attacked.
Oh, but I can take on d5, right? And then after f7, knight d4 check and knight e6.
Oh, awesome.
So that would work out well for me.
My tricks don't work. Okay, so if knight takes d5 isn't good.
But of course, it's impossible to analyze all this in a 5-minute game, and pretty thrilling. And just amazing that we saw such a high-quality chess all throughout the match. But once they're forced to play blitz, there's going to be mistakes.
Yeah, I think
unavoidable.
I think the position is just difficult for black here.
But the one nice
really
thing
strong.
for Yasser fans, I think, is that he did stay way ahead in the clock in the first game, and that's like a very good sign. I think that if things had gone normally and he hadn't found himself with this terrible decision of having to go into a pawn endgame, that he very well might have won this game because of the time edge.
Yeah, I think after e5, this was excellent by Karpov, gf6 and knight e5 check. And it looks like this knight endgame here is just better for white because of these two strong pawns. Again, it's a blitz game, so only Houdini knows for sure. But that's a very nice final position. Reminds me of an ending I had once where my opponent was mating me and I was queening also, and luckily I got to stop mate first.
So Karpov pulls ahead by 1 point in this blitz match.
What was the opening they used?
It was another Slav in this game. It was an A6 Slav, though, so slightly different than the other games.
Yeah, it looked like black equalized pretty comfortably, but
We haven't seen an E4 yet.
in the time trouble, e4, no, we're probably not going to see an e4 this match. No e4.
Now, of course, during the game, it's just completely crazy, but in between the games, we're going to have a little break between each game. We might have some chance to answer some questions, so you can still send them to livestream.com, to uschesschamps.com/questions. And I also want to remind everyone that we have a press conference at 4:30 p.m. here in St. Louis, so that's 5:30 Eastern. And you can also send your questions in for that. And we're especially looking for questions from bloggers and journalists, but anything about their careers or this match, we'd love to get. You got the URL there up on the screen as well.
Okay, I think I just put the game up.
And they are starting again. What do you think Yasser is going to play in this game? Remember, yesterday, his last time he had white, he didn't get very much. Karpov played the Lasker variation of the Queen's Gambit declined and equalized pretty comfortably. So what's it going to be this time? And we've got an English, a C4.
He has studied that so much.
And I think that makes a lot of sense. You know, he wants to mix it up. He didn't get much with white yesterday, so why not try C4?
Oh, it's a long think on move 1. Okay, E6.
Well, E6, okay, so the thing about C4 is that if Anatoly wants to go in for a Queen's Gambit decline type position, he can play for that anyway.
And that's exactly what's happening.
And that is what happened. So what does Yasser have in mind?
Well, it could be another Lasker variation.
I think you have I think the colors, the names are
Oh, okay.
names are wrong, but
Yeah.
the position's correct.
These
Yeah.
things happen to the best of us.
So Yasser-Sejravan playing white in the same position. And before we saw the Lasker with knight e4, but Karpov looks like he might be playing something different today.
Yeah, normally castles knight f3, knight e4, but maybe Yasser won't play knight f3. Oh, and b6. So transpose into a Tartakower variation if white plays knight f3. That was funny. I remember yesterday asking, have you played the Lasker defense? And Sejravan's like, I didn't look at that at all. I don't think he's ever played it. Okay, and c takes d5 early. Knight takes d5, and we saw a lot of these kinds of positions in the Karpov-Korchnoi matches from 78 and 1981. Bishop takes e7, queen takes e7. And Yasser and Karpov have had these positions also in their career with each other. They've had some famous battles in QGDs in the 80s and 90s.
Now, do you think these guys are playing a little bit slowly considering the time control? I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah, Karpov fought a long time on move 1, yeah. But he's been playing quickly since.
Yeah, I think this 2-second increment is leading them into a little bit of a false sense of...
And now Yasser plays knight e2. The knight's probably going to go to f4, c3, and put pressure on the d-pawn, and then the white queen will have access to the king side instead of the usual knight to f3. So a little bit different than the usual Tartakower variation, and I don't think Karpov's going to play bishop b7 where it's passive. He can go to e6 or f5 or g4 and activate his bishop that way. But I expect Karpov to castle here before he develops his queen side.
Now, what do you think about the game before? Do you think, how much time do you think Yasser would have had to not go for that losing endgame? So I'm not sure it would have really mattered if he had an extra 30 seconds. Because at that point, it's just, you got to go on instinct.
Okay, he's surprised when he played bishop a6. He wants to trade white squared bishops, eliminating his bad white squared bishop.
We saw the same thing by Yasser last game. These guys are playing like very similar types of structures.
It's a risky strategy because it really weakens the c6 square and the white square complex over here on the queen side.
Well, we saw yesterday that Yasser was able to grab the c6 square, but it wasn't enough for a serious edge. But in this case, the position's a little bit more. There's a little bit more juice in it. There's fewer pawn trades, so.
Yeah, Yasser's going to try to work on the d5 pawn, and also these white square weaknesses on the queen side. White has an open c file, and Karpov's trying to equalize the game by trading pieces. Knight c3 was played. Karpov's going to play bishop takes f1. Yasser recaptured with the king. And I expect Karpov is going to castle here. Although I thought he would castle before bishop a6, and I was wrong then. I'll probably be wrong now. But eventually, he's not castling. He's playing c6. And g3, king g2.
So castling by hand, as we like to call it.
Knight to d7.
In another pretty balanced position.
Yeah, I think Karpov's pretty happy. I think he thinks he's equalized here. Got rid of his bad bishop, has a very solid position. Queen to d3, connecting the rooks. And Yasser has two plans here. He's either going to play for the minority attack b4, b5, or he's going to play for e4 in the center. But with so few pieces on the board, I think e4 is just going to equalize.
But again, equality does not mean a draw in these games because nobody can play quickly and well enough to withstand the pressure of.
And for those of you just joining us,
ticking down.
Yeah, in the live audience and on the internet, Karpov won the first game in a very thrilling king and pawn ending. Knight f6, rook a to c1. So the players are taking their time. They're making it easy for us to make the moves on the board and commentate. That's what I requested last night. Very nice of them.
And then by the time they get down to the critical moment, there are so few pieces left on the board that we can understand what's happening. It's
Exactly.
awesome.
Are they allowed to offer draws and blitz?
Yep.
They are allowed.
Offers are allowed.
There's
Rook
no
up to g8.
there's no
Yeah,
30-move draw
right.
rule in the blitz.
Karpov's going to put his rook on d6, I suspect, by playing the move rook d8, defending his d-pawn, possibly tripling on the e-file, moving his rook over to the king side later, if that's what it calls for. One of the problems for white here is if he moves all of his pieces to the queen side to attack over here, that leaves the king sort of empty, and the white rook can sometimes make a rover, the knight can come in, and black can start a king side attack. So white has to be a little bit careful here. So rook fd8. Did Yasser make a move?
Rook c2.
It looks like it. Yeah, that was the one square on the board that was blocked. So, okay, rook c2. Yasser wants to double rooks and hit at this pawn on c6. It's funny, the bishop on b7 is weak usually, but at least your c6 pawn doesn't get lost. So now he can really hammer at that pawn. And I think that's why he played rook d8. He doesn't want to play rook c8 and have his rooks behind his pawn that's being attacked. He wants to play rook to d6 to defend it from the side. And you can also defend it with queen d7. But Yasser has something to hit at here, so I think he's pretty happy with his position. White has a very slight advantage here. And a long thing for Karpov. Yeah, there are some long things in these blitz games. And he played c5. Wow. That's a big decision. And this is why he actually played rook fd8. He wants to defend his pawn on d5 after the pawns get traded on c5. And they were. Black has these so-called hanging pawns. And they control a lot of squares, unless white captures them. Then they control fewer squares. They control squares off the board.
They traded pawns on knight a4.
Yep. And Yasser goes to work right away on a4. On the c5 pawn, c4 is positionally not desirable. It gives up all the dark squares. Queen d4, rook d1. Although tactically, sometimes it's okay. So Karpov with two weak pawns that Yasser's going to hit at, but those pawns control a lot of squares.
So what's the holdup here? He's got to defend it with the rook, or do you think he's already considering c4?
He's thinking of knight e4, rook a c8, and c4, and even possibly d4.
Rook c8, the
But
most
the simple
natural
rooks.
move.
The rooks are defending the pawns.
You double when you on the C file.
Yasser really hitting on that c5 pawn. And f3 kicks the knight away, but it's very weakening of white's king. Although, I guess after f3, black would play c4 and avoid losing a pawn, and then both sides have tremendous pawn weaknesses. So maybe Yasser will play b3 here. No, he put his knight back on c3. Black's most powerful piece is the knight on e4, the most aggressively placed. And the more pieces that are traded, the weaker these pawns will become. White's going to attack the pawns with the queen and the rooks, and black will just have to defend them. With pieces on the board, we can put pieces on the fifth rank, and the pawns can defend them, as Karpov is doing now. I don't know, I can't see the clocks, but it seems to me that Yasser is playing quicker this game.
The clocks are right up here, and
okay.
they've got a little more than 2 for Yasser and a little. Wow.
That can't be correct.
We got just 42 seconds for
I
Karpov.
think it has to be correct. Isn't that the actual clock?
That's the actual clock.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the electronic representation is not always accurate, but this is exact.
Ah, okay.
This
Knight
is the
takes
clock.
c3 was played.
So just 30 seconds, and Karpov playing knight takes c3.
No, Yasser told me last night at dinner he thought without the 2-second increment, he thought he'd have a big advantage in the blitz. And he thought, you know, Karpov gets down to 20, 30 seconds, he just won't be able to make all those moves. With a 2-second increment, then if the position's easy enough, it'll be easy for Karpov to play quickly.
But this is not easy. I mean, White's
No,
got
it's-
an advantage.
White's a little bit better, and Karpov's just playing too slowly. I predict a Sejravan win this game.
Well, that would be nice. 'Cause it'll
Karpov just
even the
doesn't have any
score.
time on his clock.
Karpov has to start
No,
moving faster.
2 minutes to 14 seconds. That's not tenable.
No, he needs
No,
to be
Yasser's
playing
going to win.
quicker.
Yasser's going to win this game, or he's going to be really upset if he doesn't. He knows he has the advantage, and he knows he has a huge time advantage. That's even more important here. Yeah, you can't have 10 seconds to 2 minutes. You just can't do it. Unless you're Hikaru, then maybe. Maybe. And that's a big maybe. Okay, B3 was played, keeping these pawns under wraps. They can never move.
I wonder what Hikaru thinks of these blitz games. I wonder if he's watching in Moscow.
Karpov starts with a big attack on the king side, H4, H5, which was easily stopped by H4. And then G6 was played. Rook to, what did he play? He moved his rook to back to C2.
And then A5.
Karpov played A5. Did he play A4?
King's G1.
King G1.
Just 3 seconds left
No,
on the clock for
King
Karpov.
G1 is important to get off this diagonal. I agree with that. The king was riskily placed on G2. King G1 is a safe move.
Queen C7.
Yep. Queen B5 was played, putting tremendous pressure on all these pawns.
Queen B5.
Rook B8 was played.
Just,
Queen back to D3. Karpov played A4.
and now Karpov's trying to play a little bit faster.
Wow, great defensive play by Karpov. He's trying to push Yasser back here, although...
Queen B5, Rook B8, Queen E2,
Oh, he played back to E2.
and now A4.
Yeah, it seemed like he left his D pawn hanging. So yeah, that's better.
A4, Queen D3, takes on B3, takes again on B3. So Karpov actually gaining some counterplay there. You know, now the B3 pawn is weak. And then
No,
he played,
this is great defense by Karpov.
and then he played Queen to D6,
Rook D1.
trying to overprotect that pawn on C5.
No, I think Karpov's equalized now.
Yasser went for the other
D4.
pawn with Rook D1, D4. So what's the idea now after takes on D4?
Well, the B3 pawn is hanging if you ever take with the queen. So the Karpov's completely equalized.
so
I
that's
think.
the awesome thing about him playing.
3 seconds, wow. He's equalized in one sense. In another sense,
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard for him to get up to 55 seconds here. He's going to have to play a lot of
well,
1 second
Yasser's
moves.
taking a lot of time. He's already taken a minute more than he's supposed to.
It's true, but
Fantastic defense with no time on his clock, wow.
can Karpov actually make moves in 1 second? Or
As long as he makes them in 2 seconds, he's okay.
True, but at some point you're going to need 3 seconds, and that's where there's going to be a problem.
Okay, Queen E4 was played, Queen E6. Karpov wants to trade everything, and he did. Queen takes E6.
And he is gaining
Rook
time
takes
on the
E6.
clock. He's got 6 seconds now. That's twice
Yep.
as much as he had earlier. 8 seconds. He is able to make moves in less than a second.
Sure.
That's important.
It looks like he...
And now he's got behind the B pawn.
Right, and this is going to be a
People
draw.
think I'm condescending. They're trying
Yep,
to say
and they
that-
agreed to a draw.
And a
Beautiful
fantastic,
defense. Yeah.
fantastic defense. We had him down
And,
for the
and
count.
both players are laughing. Now, Karpov traded all the pieces, and it was just completely drawn.
So even in blitz, he can defend like a genius.
Yep.
How about that?
No, that was really nice defense. He defended all his pawns, traded all the queenside pawns off, traded queens, and there was nothing left.
Incredible. What an amazing.
Karpov winning with white, drawing with black, and the blitz.
But
Very
if he
nice.
played that well from the beginning of the game, he would just dominate and crush, right? It's almost like he needs to have a bad position and no time on his clock, and then he pulls out these insane resources.
Both players laughing after the game. Yeah,
Well, they're
Yasser's
having
not
fun
gonna,
now.
Yasser's not going to be happy about that. 2 minutes to 10 seconds and a slight advantage, and Karpov easily equalized and neutralized the advantage.
They're having fun, and we're having fun too. We did have a comment on the first game. Somebody mentioned that they were using Houdini, and that this is a question from Mark, and that he says that King F8 was a double question mark move, and instead King G8 is mate in 23 for Yasser Zarawan.
Oh, after G6 check.
Yes.
Ah.
And you know, it's funny because Yasser was first put his king on E8, then
Yeah,
he switched it to F8.
Yeah, his king was sort of hovering around those squares.
So what's the deal? Is the idea that after King G8, why can't we play G7?
Well, G7's not check, so I get to queen before you play.
I see. And if I play F7, you just blockade, and I can't get to
Right, yeah.
E7 in time.
Yeah, I play king G7 and I queen before you do.
Whereas when you play King F8, the difference is that
Yeah, G7's check. Yeah, G7 check is
G7 check, and then
G7
once I
check is
play
good for
King
white.
F7, you have
Yeah.
E6 check.
G7 check's
Yeah.
good for white. F7 check's not good for white. That's the difference.
Because
That's why you
one
gotta
we
play
can
king
block
G7.
up with another check, and the other we
The
can't.
big difference is that there's the E pawn that can come down
Right.
and force the king off where when you're on G7, they don't have to.
Exactly. When
And the
G7
arbiters are working hard resetting the pieces. It's the hardest work they've done all event.
Maybe
Luckily,
you
they're
just
not
pull up that
listening
position.
now, so.
You just pull up
And
that
luckily
position
she's
and
wearing
take
a,
What's that?
Carol Drecki is wearing a fabulously stylish black and white dress.
That is lucky. What'd you say, Macaulay?
Can Can you pull up that position you were just talking about in the first game?
I can try to do that.
And could you invite me again? Thanks.
Yes. Let's get the first game going.
This is fun. We should do more Blitz commentary, but not more than one Blitz game at a time.
Okay. So let's go back to this position. Let me do some technical work here. I don't see you logged in, Jennifer.
Oh,
Maybe that's why I can't invite you.
no, I am.
Okay, let's go to the position that we were discussing. After G6 check, is that on the screen? Yeah. King F8 losing, what Yasser played, King G8 winning. So therefore, it would be a better move. After G7, Black Queens and wins. And after F7 check, we can still lose with King F8 if you like losing. But if you don't like losing, then King G7 wins. And Black gets a queen.
And let's show the difference between that and what happened in the game. And
Yeah,
what about the third option that he was thinking about playing? He was thinking about playing King E8.
King E8 must also lose because G7 is the same thing. And now,
Because you can just play
well,
G7.
Black can queen and try to play this queen and pawn ending, but I don't want to play this queen and
Yeah.
pawn ending. And then, yeah, then King F7 is just the game.
But
This is exactly what happened. So, yeah, King E8 and King G8 both lose. King F8 and King E8 lose. King G8 winning. Now G7 is in check, and Black Queen's next move.
it's too bad for Yasser because he kind of got in the right
Yeah.
direction. He was going to play King E8, and he's like, no, King F8, and he just needed to think another second. He would have played into G8. But it's so hard to calculate with just a few seconds on your clock. I mean, it's just about instincts at that point.